I'm Andrew Nesky, and this is Science in the Outer Streams. Today, in this two-part series, we will be investigating the life, legacy, and works of 18th century philosopher, scientist, and theologian Emmanuel Swedenborg, a man who has been called one of the greatest thinkers Sweden has ever produced, and whose written theology, formed through his long-term discourse with angelic beings, sparked a Christian religious movement that is known as the New Jerusalem Church. Our guest is the Reverend Dr. Jonathan S. Rose. Dr. Rose is the series editor and a translator for the New Century Edition, a new series of annotated English translations of Emmanuel Swedenborg's theological writings. Dr. Rose has been curator of the Swedenborgia Library and now serves Bryn Athyn College of the New Church, an accredited Swedenborgian college, as chaplain and assistant professor of religion and sacred languages. Dr. Reverend Rose, what should I call you?
Dr. Rose.
Dr. Rose, thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Rose. Thank you for coming.
It's a pleasure.
I think we should try to start with something very general. Who was Emmanuel Swedenborg?
Emmanuel Swedenborg lived in the 18th century. He was born in 1688 and died in 1772, so he lived to be 84 years old. And he was born in Stockholm, Sweden.
Mm-hmm.
He was a person who became quite famous in his times as a scientist. He was one of these Renaissance men who was interested in everything, and he devoured all knowledge that he could get his hands on. When he was traveling, he would stay with people and learn their trades, and so he became quite a famous scientist. He published a lot on anatomy, metallurgy, chemistry. I think he founded the science of crystallography, studied the brain. He was on a relentless search for the soul and the relationship between the soul and the body, which was a subject that had exercised a number of people at that time. Leibniz and Wolff were other philosophers who were investigating that. And I think he actually came to despair in this search. People thought, well, is the soul in the pineal gland in the brain, or where is it housed? They would weigh the body when it died to see what was missing when the spirit was gone and that sort of thing. And he wrote a lengthy work called, it's been translated as Economy of the Animal Kingdom, which really means the soul's kingdom, the kind of economy of the soul's kingdom, and felt that wasn't good enough. A few years later started working on the animal kingdom, another work on the soul's kingdom, and fell into kind of a crisis in his late 50s, feeling that he still didn't have it. He was a tremendously energetic person, and he wouldn't let something go. He was sort of a dog with a bone when he was pursuing something. And in a fascinating way, his prayers were eventually answered. He'd always done this study in a kind of Christian context, and the whole of Europe was a Christian context at that point. His father was a Lutheran bishop, and I think he'd had a deep faith, a belief in angels and this sort of thing since he was a child. But the academic world was very intellectual at that point. The Enlightenment and everything was the power of the human reason, the penetration of the faculty to be able to understand the world and comprehend it. And I think he came to a point of despair where he simply couldn't find what he was looking for, and then had this transformative series of experiences, a lot of physical symptoms, a lot of shaking. He documents this in his Journal of Dreams, which is very powerful reading, just a journal for himself that was written in his native tongue of Swedish, unlike his publications, which were in Latin. And broke through, had a vision of Christ, and broke through into a spiritual realm that took him a number of years to comprehend, I think, what was going on, but started to have an experience of what the shamanic tradition might call the duality, living in both worlds at once, and took his scientific rational mind to serve the process of studying this world and looking at his experiences and writing them down. Language would frequently fail him, but he wrote these 18 theological titles that filled 25 quarto volumes from then on until his death at 84.